All right, hello everyone and welcome. My name is Alan Oriana and I'm a program development intern for Junior Achievement. Today we have a special presentation with Northfield Bank and we'll be leading a virtual panel-led discussion. So introducing our bank panelists, we have Stephen Klein, the chairman and CEO of Northfield Bank. We have Tracy Echeverria, Senior VP and Residential Lending Team Lead. We have Eric Larson, the Senior VP and Commercial Team Leader, and James Thompson, the VP and Compliance and Vendor Management. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started with the panel questions. So, so firstly, do the panelists want to introduce themselves and describe your position and basic duties?
That'd be terrific. Why don't I start out, Alan? And thank you very much, Alan and Junior Achievement, for allowing us to participate today. I'm Steve Klein. I'm the chairman and CEO of Northfield Bank. And I'll say those are two distinct titles and responsibilities. As the chairman of the board, I'm responsible for the leadership of our board of directors to ensure that we're meeting our governance responsibilities to our stockholders. I work very closely with our lead independent director to create agendas for meetings, to ensure that we're topical in the items we're discussing, and that we're meeting all our regulatory requirements. And so that's from the board level. From the CEO level, that's where I'm really spending more of my time focusing on operations and working with my team to ensure that we're executing on our strategic plan and hitting our performance goals and opportunities.
Thank you, Steve. Eric, would you like to go ahead and go next?
Sure. Thank you again for setting this up and having us involved. I'm Eric Larson. I'm a Senior Vice President, Commercial Team Leader for the Eastern New Jersey half of Northfield Bank. So on a daily basis, what I am doing is I'm working with commercial business clients, talking to them, understanding what their needs are, listening to both their deposit and lending needs, working with them and trying to structure the proper financing arrangement that would suit them and help them grow in the future. And I manage a team of lenders, and that's what we do in the Eastern New Jersey marketplace, mainly Middlesex and Union counties.
Thank you, Eric. Tracy?
I'm Tracy Echeverria. I'm a Senior Vice President of Residential Lending here at Northfield Bank. My department focuses on consumer lending, so lending to an individual or person, not so much to a business like Eric's area does. So we lend to consumers. Consumer lending could be anything from buying a home to taking a home equity loan, getting a personal loan or an auto loan, anything that a consumer or an individual would be in need to borrow money for.
Thank you, Tracy. James?
Thank you, Alan. So my name is James Thompson. I'm the compliance officer for Northfield Bank. So a compliance officer's role is just to ensure that the bank and all of its employees are complying with all of the federal and state laws and regulations and guidance that apply to all of the bank's operations. So we achieve this by reviewing policies, procedures, transactions, and training of our employees just to make sure that we're complying with everything. You know, we also play a role in the design of any new product that the bank rolls out. We just make sure that it, again, complies with all laws and regulations.
Thank you, James. And to go ahead and get us started, can anyone describe a time where you saved money for an item you wanted?
I'll start with it. I can start with that one.
Go ahead, Eric. Go ahead.
Yeah. And it took a while to save for the item, but it was saving for a deposit on the house. So it was really focusing on my budget, you know, and making sure that over a period of time, I was managing my cash flow, personal cash flow, to make sure I put money aside weekly, monthly, so that at a certain point I had enough money saved so that I could put a down payment on a house that I could live in. And it was very important that I focused on that.
Oh wow, Eric, at what age would you recommend people start saving for their house?
Day one.
Day one.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Well,
Eric.
you know,
Go ahead,
I was
Steven.
gonna. The only thing I was gonna add there is, you know, there's the more you save towards a home, the more economical it is from the perspective of borrowing less money.
Mhm.
There's other costs involved with private mortgage insurance if you don't have a sufficient down payment. So the more money that you can save towards your home gives you the best cost options.
Yeah, definitely. The more money you have, the less you have to borrow. And in the end, is less in interest
Yep.
fees. Okay, so we'll go ahead and go to the next question. So, can anyone give an example of a situation in your company or job that involved money management strategies and smart financial decisions?
You know what? I'll jump in on that one,
Okay.
Alan, because that's almost the definition of a bank.
Hmm.
You know, we have what we call a management asset and liability committee because our entire balance sheet is deposits that we've taken from our customers. We're the stewards of that money, and we have to make sure that we're investing that in safe and sound investments, whether they're securities or loans, so that we can ensure that when our customers need their deposits, the monies will be there for them. So that's something every bank does almost on a daily basis, if not daily, weekly, and monthly.
So it's definitely crucial to the operations of the bank.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Stephen. So for the first question we have here today is which do you enjoy more, earning money or spending money? Stevie, you want to go ahead and get us started with that question?
That's an easy one for me. It's saving money. I really do enjoy that. I do enjoy saving it, building towards an item. Typically, it's things that you know I can give to others, but it's definitely saving money.
Yeah, and then that also requires a lot of healthy saving habits and budgeting. So what are your opinions on budgeting?
Budgeting is very important. It's very
Hmm.
important. You need to understand how much money you have come in. And I always like to say live a couple notches below your belt, meaning that if you earn X, don't spend X, and especially don't spend X plus two. You want to save money so that you always have things for a rainy day. Sometimes you know that the level of earnings aren't always there, and if you aren't spending up to your earnings capacity, then you'll have the ability to adapt when unforeseen circumstances occur.
I like the fact that you said saving for a rainy day because an emergency fund is a topic that we've previously discussed in other JA webinars. So, as we've seen with, COVID, it's very important to have a rainy day set in place, a rainy day fund set in place so that, you're able to um, pay your bills on time and then still have that fund to remain, financially stable.
Absolutely.
So, Eric, do you want to offer your thoughts on this? Which do you enjoy more, earning money or spending money?
Well, again, I like earning money, but the point is, I earn my money through my career, and I'm just happy with my job, and I really don't focus on the savings because I have certain things put in place where monies are put aside. So I have a little what I call slush fund every month. Every paycheck, I have money put to the side for about $200, and that money is set aside for what we call special things, such as trips or whatever. So I do enjoy spending that money because it means I collected it over a period of time, and then it's usually for the family or something for the family that we do. So I enjoy spending and having it with the family.
Yeah, and in terms of earning money like with the company, we also talk about a lot about retirement funds and 401ks. Um, what would you suggest to the audience in terms of having a retirement account?
I would suggest that you do it from day one. It's
Mhm.
funny, when I started years ago, it was just coming out 401ks, and I, from day one, put away at least 6% of my salary into a 401k. And because you do it from day one, you never see it as income because it's automatically going into that savings account. And then one day when you look down and you see your savings account, you'll realize a lot more money is sitting in there because you never thought about it. It was automatically taken out of your paycheck.
Definitely. And if your employer offers match contributions, definitely take advantage of that. Because essentially that is free money for you. So the following question, what was the first job or task you ever received the money for? How much were you paid? Eric, you want to go ahead and take that one?
Yeah, that was a fun one. I was about 12 years old, and my mom said, "Hey, you want to earn some money?" I said, "Sure." Well, we had a good family friend that lived nearby, and she said, "All right, we'll go over to her house, and she'll pay you." So I went over to her house, and as I walk in, she says, "Well, your job today is going to be picking weeds around the outside of my house, and you're going to earn $1 an hour for all the weed picking." And I think I worked for 5 hours, and I had $5 after all that work. So it really taught me a lot, what to do and save money way back then.
What'd you learn on that job in terms of work ethic? Is $5
You have to
an
work.
hour? Hmm.
It's still, you have to work hard, and you have to be satisfied with your job and what you're doing, because if you don't do the job right, people won't have you back, or they won't give you increases in pay and stuff like that. So it's really important to be happy in what you're doing, but do the job right and quality of work. Then you, at the end of the day, when you look at it, you can sit there and say, "I did it right." And that's who you have to respond to, is yourself.
Thank you, Eric. So, James, you want to go ahead and follow up with what was your first job or task you ever received money for?
Sure. So I think I was very, very young, maybe 5 or 6 years old, and I can recall setting up a lemonade stand outside of our house. And I would, I asked my mom if I could do it, if I could just mix up some lemonade or some Kool-Aid or something in the house and take it out there and set up a little table and sell for, 25 cents a cup, something like that. And, I think I learned a lot through that. You learn that, business is a little bit better on a hot day. And, a lot of people can't pass up stopping for, an adorable kid on the side of the road. so, that was, I learned a few things through there. Another thing was, my overhead was very low because I was basically taking the beverages we had in our refrigerator and selling them, by the side of the road. But I do remember one day we didn't have lemonade. We didn't have anything to sell. And so I went over to the sink and just started filling up a pitcher with water. And my mom was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to go out and sell some water." And she said, "Water is free. No one's going to buy water from you." So, but I did carry through life a lot of those, a lot of the things that I learned, just the value of earning money, the hard work that you need to put into it. And and to this very day, I'll still stop at a kid's lemonade stand if I see one, just because I know that, they could be out there playing on the playground, but they're there trying to earn, a dollar. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. And really shows a lot of great work ethic. And I know you definitely had the opportunity to practice your sales skills.
Yeah.
All right. So for the following question we have is what is the most important skill you learned in your line of work and how did it help you? James, you want to go ahead and stick with that one?
Sure. So, two things that stick out to me primarily is one, collaboration with your teammates, your coworkers. You can't underestimate that. You work at a bank or wherever you do work. You're working with other people to achieve a common goal. And if everyone pitches in and works together as a team, you really can achieve some great things. And so along with that collaboration, comes a lot of respect. And then also you can learn from your teammates as well, your coworkers. And that goes into my second point is never stop learning. No matter what job you have, if it's your first job starting out, or if it's, you're many years into your career, never stop learning, because you can always learn from those around you and from your employer as well. If they offer education opportunities in terms of training, take it, even if it's something that you don't think you'll necessarily be doing right away. If it's offered to you, take that training and learn a new skill, because it could only help you in the long run. And then, of course, just learning from those around you. You're surrounded by talented people, especially those that may be, let's say, your manager or supervisor. They got there through their own achievements. So learn from that. Ask them, what they can offer you, and take that and learn from it and excel.
Thank you, James. And Steven, as CEO, I would love to hear your answers. What was the most important skill you learned in your line of work?
I James said collaboration, and
Mhm.
I agree. I think communication, curiosity, passion in what you do. I cannot recall ever having a job that I didn't jump into head first. If any job worth doing is worth doing right, and I think if people can, no matter what the job is, if you can view it and see that you can do better with it, you can expand upon it. I think you'll always have a very meaningful experience in whatever it is. Passion and communication are just critical in everything we do, and I think that takes you a long way in most any situation.
Yeah, and with any job, like the core principles that you learn are definitely applicable beyond that job. Uh, Tracy, I would love to hear your thoughts.
So I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what James said about teamwork and learning, and to continue learning, anything that you really can in your job, or even a job that's not related to yours, is to really pass your knowledge on to the people that work with you or for you. Um, your expertise, teaching them the things that just makes them a better employee and helps build the teamwork that's needed for success within a department and within a bank. So the more knowledge you can absorb, and the more knowledge you can teach to the people that work around you, will make for a better work environment for everybody.
Alan, can I jump in there too? One of the things I did, and maybe it's more so applicable in today's world than it was when we were growing up, is communication is a lot more than just texting and pinging and emailing. And that I don't care what generation you come from, uh, one-on-one communication that creates the networking, that creates the relationships that will take you so far in your career.
Yeah, and Steven, can you speak a little bit more about communication in terms of, COVID times where we saw like a spark of at-home workers and hybrid work environments and the importance of
Yep.
it?
Yeah, this tool now, these WebExes and Zooms and Teams were critical during that time frame. I mean, they really did keep us connected. But I'll tell you, and we've seen it's been a volleyball up and down going between remote and coming back to work. I think there is some happy medium where tools like this do work very well, but for individuals, especially people that are earlier in their careers, coming into work, being, in a room together, that really promotes collaboration and teaming and getting to answers that you might not otherwise get to. If you do have to be on tools like this, it's important to keep your camera on so that you're engaged with the other individuals and don't have it off. So I think we're going to continue to see the work model um, migrate over time.
Mhm.
I don't know if we'll ever go back to the way we were before, everybody in the office all the time. I don't think we need to. I think we can be very efficient and effective, but I think there has to be a combination, especially for younger people as they're developing in their careers.
Thank you, Stephen. Um, we'll go ahead and proceed with the next question. Is there something you regret buying or not buying? Stephen, you want to go ahead and take that one?
Actually, believe it or not, as a saver, you would think I'd say I'd regret buying, but it's the things I really can only think of a couple of things I regretted not buying. Things that at the point in time I thought I couldn't afford, but as I look back, they would have been great. They were mostly great experiences. It was going somewhere with my friends that I didn't do. So I always, as you move on into your career and in life, you won't forget you won't regret not spending that X dollars, but you probably will regret not going to that concert or not doing something from an experience perspective. Those are things longer term that you remember. So probably a couple things like that. A concert or two that I thought I couldn't afford, or a vacation that I should have gone on with my friends.
Yeah, for our young professionals out there, it's very important to balance work life and personal life. You don't want to be 100% work life. As I'm sure you know through your experience. Um, Anybody else? Something you regret not buying or buying?
I'm sure I have many regrets over the years of buying or not buying things. Nothing specific jumps out at me. But I'm with Steve. I'm sure there's many of times where I thought I couldn't afford to do an event or go to something with my friends that I probably wished I would have.
Hmm.
I'm not a real material person, so I don't spend money on material items and then regret it like a lot of other people do. But I think it's important to just know, what you want to spend your money on and make sure that you find a way to save money for those items, whether it's a car, a wedding, a house, a vacation. You just have to have a good budget and be able to put money aside to save for it. That way you don't have any regrets.
Yeah, and I'd like to add a very important and very common um, thing that people tend to regret not buying is investing options, like certain stocks or mutual funds. And I would like to hear like your thoughts on investing for a young individual. Anyone?
You know what? I will piggyback on what Eric said. I think it's so important to start early. It doesn't have to be a lot of money at all, but take some dollar amount, whether it's every week if you get paid every 2 weeks, and even if you don't have a 401k, like when I was younger and before got my first job after coming out of college. Before that, we didn't have 401ks, but I took a very small part of my paycheck every week. And I put it into a mutual fund. Back then, they used to have this thing called Money Magazine. There was no research at that time that you would do online, and that was one of the things they talked about, was just take a small amount of money, and no matter what the market is doing, just put away, whether it's $100 or $50 a week, $100 a week, or $100 every 2 weeks. Keep putting it away over time. You're young. They say to put it more in stock funds. There's so many equity index funds out there. You don't have to guess what the next hot stock is going to be. Stay diversified, keep
Mhm.
investing, and over time, you will just be shocked at what those accounts total up to.
Thank you,
Compounding
Steve.
is a very powerful tool.
Thank you, Stephen. So the following question that we have here is, did you receive pocket money or an allowance when you were a child, and was it enough for you? Eric, you want to go ahead and lead us with that question?
Sure. And believe it or not, actually, no, I never did receive an allowance or pocket money growing up. My mom always said, no, you have to go out and earn it, because if you want to go get something, you have to spend time doing it. So like I said, my first job was doing weeding. Then I picked up a route delivering newspapers. Sometimes I would shovel snow for people, and eventually by high school I was pumping gas, but I always had something. And if I wanted something of my own, I'd have to go out and buy it, and I'd have to save the money. And that's the way I saved the money for my first car, was over the years putting that money away to have that first car. So no, I never received it. I always was taught how to work and the work ethic from day one.
I like how you were mentioning saving for a car with your allowance when you were a child. Um, can you speak on the importance of having short-term and long-term goals, like in terms of saving options?
Well, you always have to have different goals, and
Mhm.
a goal doesn't have to be the same all the time, and your goal can change. Today your goal may be getting, let's say, a Volkswagen Bug, and tomorrow it may be a different car. But you always have to look at your goals. It may be a vacation, and it's based on where you are today, but it's always something to have as there. But also to remember is when you achieve the goal, it's not the end. Then you have to look at what is the next thing you want to do and where do you want to go next with the savings. But you have to keep that process going for the next thing you're looking at.
Yeah, and how would wants versus needs come into play in terms of like setting up the short-term and long-term goals that you mentioned?
Well, back then it's a little different than today. I mean, you have to look at the age of the person you are and what you're looking for.
Mhm.
Some people, a want is maybe the sneakers or a pair of jeans. A need maybe a bicycle or a car for a job. So then you have to really look at what do you want and what do you need? Do you need a bike or a car to get to work to earn money? So you have to really evaluate that. But then again, you also have to look at sometimes with clothing, what's appropriate for work. So those are things you have to balance between the two, and can they be used for both?
Thank you, Eric. And one more question. For our audience, what would you suggest for them to avoid impulse purchases, and how may that hinder their saving goals?
You know what? I'll jump in there.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Trace. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think any impulse decision, purchase, anything you're gonna do on impulse, you should always try to sit on it for at least a day and make sure it's something you really want to say, something you really want to do, something you really want to purchase. I think a lot of times people do things on impulse and may end up regretting it afterwards. So I think good advice would be to wait at least a day and rethink about whether it's something you really want to do before you go ahead and pull the trigger.
And Stephen, would you like to add on?
Yeah, actually, I think that was very good advice from Tracy. The only thing I would add to that too is, don't add injury to insult in the fact that if there is something you want, you know, don't use a credit card to buy it. Save for it, and again, it'll just be better in the long run. And along the credit card side too, one thing I see a mistake a lot of people make, including my own children sometimes, is the impulse to open up a credit card when you're in a store. And from that perspective, though, I have encouraged people to open a credit card up in a very disciplined manner. Build your credit. If there are things that you need to buy, and if they'll open a credit card up, normally stores will give you a credit card more than first Visas and Mastercards. So start to establish credit in a very disciplined way, and that will also benefit you in the years to come, including when you want to go buy a home. You'll have a credit report on hand.
Right, just make sure you're always paying your
Hey,
bills
yep.
on time and never pay the minimum payments. It's very important when younger people are trying to establish credit that they pay everything on time, use it by small amounts, pay it every month. That way they build a good credit score, because as they get older, they need that credit history to buy a car, to buy a house, to get a credit card. Pretty much for anything that they want to borrow money for, you need a good credit history. So it's important for the younger generation to understand the importance of paying their bills on time and paying more than the minimum payments. Sorry, Steve, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I think that's a perfect point.
And as a bank, what would you say are the key components into a great credit score, since most of our audience are high school students?
That's definitely a Tracy question.
So not having too much open credit cards, not having too much debt on your credit report. So whether it's credit cards or car loans or whatever it is, making sure you always pay on time. As soon as you start paying your bills late, your credit score starts dropping significantly, and it's very hard to come back and get that fixed. It could take years to fix that. So keep your balances low, don't open too many accounts, pay on time, and like I said, always pay more than the minimum payment that's required.
From all of the factors, what would you say is like the main downfall of most people when they're dealing with credit cards?
Because they just like to spend money. They like buying things, spending money, and they don't realize, unfortunately, younger people don't understand really. I have kids that are teenagers. They don't understand what a credit card is. They don't understand that when they use it, they have to pay it later on. So if you didn't have the $50 today, you have to have the $50 when the bill comes in. And they don't realize it. And then they get a bill that says they only have to pay $20. And they're like, oh, this is great. I don't have to pay the full 50. And then that rolls on and on for them. And then before you know it, they're buying, the $300 pair of sneakers that they can't afford because they know they don't have to pay the $300 bill. And it becomes, a bad trend. So it's really important for the younger generation to understand that if they're going to use a credit card to buy something, they really need to have the money to pay the bill when the bill comes in. So that they're building their credit, but not really extending themselves into debt.
Yeah, for students who want to learn more about credit and whose schooling doesn't offer any financial literacy courses, what would you recommend them do to further that education?
I don't know. That's a tough one. I thought every school is required to provide financial literacy for high school students. Is it not?
No, no, it's certain states that require it for graduation, but not
Yes.
all.
Yeah. I know New Jersey does.
Alan, there's so many resources out there. It's just
Hmm.
as I think about, even if you go on to things like, like a Schwab, like a Fidelity Investments, there's so many resources. You don't even have to open an account. There's so many resources and tools out there. And there's so many newsletters that are free that you can subscribe to that will have fundamental good recommendations and practices. Just many of the things Tracy just said too. That that it's not rocket science, but it's important to talk about because young people aren't familiar with it because they've never done it before. And sometimes organizations, companies can try to take advantage of what Tracy just said. Everyone's got the peer pressure to want that pair of sneakers, to want that pair of jeans, and to have the discipline to know to save for it, and or if you are going to use a charge card, to be able to pay for it in the future is critical to the conversation.
And I'll just jump in here as well, Alan, just to add to what Steve said. There are a lot of great resources online. There's another resource online. So there's a government agency called the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB.gov, and they have an enormous library of resources for consumers of all walks of life, all stages of life, including young adults and those just establishing credit. And to Tracy's point earlier about that pair of jeans that you couldn't afford today and might not be able to afford when the bill comes, they look at things like that, the CFPB does, and in terms of the compounded interest that adds to a purchase that you can't afford and you're making the minimum payment. That $300 pair of jeans, once you factor in all of the interest, could be $1,000 by the time you pay it off, just because you've taken so long to pay it off and you've incurred so much interest for that. So you really have to understand that the true cost of credit, or the true cost of what you're buying.
So maybe we should try to explain that anytime a consumer or a person borrows money from a bank or a lender or a creditor, the bank or the creditor is charging you interest. So they're not giving you the money for free. So if you charge $500 on a credit card and you don't pay the $500 when the bill comes, you're now paying interest on that $500. And on a credit card, that can sometimes be 20%. So that's what James is trying to say. Now your purchase of $100, add 20% to that. And every month you don't pay it, you're paying 20% to the creditor on the amount that you haven't paid back. So it ends up becoming a lot more money than what you initially thought you were purchasing, that your initial purchase was. So it can become very expensive to borrow money. So again, the best key is save up for what you need to buy. If you can't afford to buy it, then you probably shouldn't buy it when you want to. Wait until you have the money to pay for it.
Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, it's very important to pay off all of your balances as soon as possible. And a good rule of thumb is, to not make any purchases unless you have the finances to repay those credit cards. Um, so for our following question is, what was your educational path like? Did your education guide you to the career you're currently in, or did things shift along the way? Steven, you want to go ahead and get us started with that question?
I'm probably unusual in this regard. My children tell me this too, because in high school, I really knew what I wanted to do because I took my first accounting course. I think I was a junior in high school, and I loved it. I'd never loved the topic like I did that. And I started to do some research on it. And, you know, it wasn't very deep research, but I figured out what it was. I knew that public accounting and being a partner in public accounting firms was a very good job to have. They made good money. So that was the path I took myself on. I went to a state college, very affordable. My parents, unlike today, where a lot of parents will jet you all over the country looking for colleges. I was told you can go to any college you want as long as it's in the state of New Jersey and it's a state school. So that was the guidance I got at that point in time. I picked Montclair State. It was a terrific school, set me on the path to where I am now. I was at KPMG, public accounting firm, and we did a lot of community banks. Fell in love with community banking, and then that's how I got to Northfield. I met Northfield bank executives through working at KPMG, and I started here as the chief financial officer, which is a natural progression from public accounting. Loved getting involved in operations. I became the chief operating officer, then the president, and then when our CEO retired, I had the opportunity to be the CEO.
Steven, you seem like you had a very straightforward path. Um, what can you shed some light on your internship experience and how that helped you acquire like a position, and then how you would recommend our audience to, find internship opportunities in their educational careers?
I mean, I was fortunate too. Montclair had a very strong internship program, so I leaned very heavily on the resources in my school, and they did a great job in preparing me for it. And I think that's probably my biggest piece of advice is do some research, find out what resources are out there, and use them to the greatest extent you can.
Yeah, and different institutions have career centers or career fairs where employers come in and scout out potential students to work for them.
Yep. And I will say, going back to my comments about the personal interactions and communications, once you do make a connection, if you do have an interview, do a follow up. Either follow up, write a personal note, even a personal phone call is helpful. Personal interaction really, I think, sets people apart in today's world.
Thank you, Stephen. So, Tracy, what was your educational path like?
So when I finished school, I went right into banking, believe it or not, consumer lending. And I've been there ever since. I worked for about 4 or 5 different community banks, all in New Jersey. And I've always worked in consumer lending. I have a very boring career. Sorry.
What was your major in college? Did you go to college?
No, I did not.
Oh wow. Can you explain um kind of like your perspective on college for individuals out there who may choose to not go to college and follow a different route?
Well, if I was talking to my kids, I would tell them a college education is very important. Um, and I would probably say that to anyone. However, I did not have a college education and I've done
Mhm.
well for myself, but I think it's important for a multitude of different reasons. You know, besides the college experience, you do learn a lot more. When you're in high school, you're still a very immature person and you can learn a lot as you're maturing through the college years, just, you know, working, teamwork, collaboration, you know, how to be an adult without your parents telling you what to do. So it is important, I think, for kids to try college and give it a chance and see if it works for them.
Thank you, Tracy. And James, what was your educational path like?
So I did go to college after high school. My major was in economics. That was not something that I picked right off the bat. I knew I wanted something in the business realm, so I thought I would just go to school for just general business. As I got more into it, and I found the I found the curriculum of economics. Something about it just really stuck with me. I like to analyze, a large amount of data and predict things from that based on past data or results. So I personally, I found that interesting. And then after school, I didn't technically use my economics degree for my job path. From there, shortly after college, I started working for a small mortgage loan origination company, and I processed mortgage loan applications for consumers. And it was through that, I knew virtually nothing about a mortgage, right? I didn't own a home. I didn't really know much about, such a large purchase like that. But through that job and the skills that I picked up through that, I learned that sort of the ins and outs of a mortgage loan, and also through that the laws and regulations that apply to it, and it was that I built on that eventually got me into compliance to oversee that. So I thought that was sort of an interesting path for me, at least.
Thank you, James. And Eric, what about you? What was your educational path like?
Well, yeah, I did go to college, and while I was in college, I started out as a marketing major, but I didn't like that, and I switched over to economics. But the reason and the way I got into banking was actually during the summers. I worked as a teller for a bank for 3 different summers, 3 different banks, and I really enjoyed it, the interaction with people. And then when I graduated, I reached out to some of the people that I had worked with, and they were able to get me a management training program through that process. So I made a connection while in college that helped me get the start of my banking career as a result of that.
I like how you mentioned you got that job through a connection. Can you talk a little bit more about the importance of taking advantage of different work opportunities or networking that may help an individual uh, in terms of finding, their true passions and taking advantage of different opportunities?
Well, it's simple. I mean, while you're working or you talk to people, you build a relationship, you listen to what they do, you understand what they do, and then you sometimes, it's the funny part is just ask. A
Hmm.
lot of people are afraid to ask the simple question of, hey, can you help me? You know what I mean? And that's really what is important sometimes. Just what is the worst thing they're going to say? No. But part of it is building the relationship with all the different people. And you'll find also people that you may know at one position today, they may move jobs to another location. So now you have a contact somewhere else. And that's where, going back to also what Steve said, the personal touch and talking to someone and getting to know them and understand what they do, it helps you. And you always keep in touch with them, and one way of doing it is also what I do a lot of times is also see what my friends are doing on LinkedIn. So there's also that source for business people. You go to LinkedIn and you can see where they are, catch up with them. on LinkedIn and that media, but it's always best to talk to people personally, because then you really understand what's going on.
Yeah, Stephen, would you like to add on?
Alan, the only thing actually that came to mind as I was listening to the team here is, when I think about the world today and the types of professionals out there and career paths, when most of the people on this webinar were growing up, there wasn't IT, there wasn't MIS, there wasn't cybersecurity. There are professions now that there's a lot of different paths to get to those trainings and skill sets, not necessarily going through college. You may be able to go to a lot of types of uh, technical schools or certificate programs. And as you build your skill sets there, college may come later for some people where you want to develop the leadership skills or the managerial skills. And that can happen at a community college too. So there's a lot of different paths. I don't think everything has to be the more traditional 4-year college path.
That's very true, Stephen. I definitely agree. In terms of having internship opportunities, I believe it's very crucial to take internships within, especially as college students, within the fields that you're interested in, because that way you get to see that certain profession in action and whether or not you actually enjoy it, because it's different from, reading it in a textbook than actually uh, being in that profession day to day. So, with that, I'd like to go on to our next question, which is, what advice would you give to your younger self? And as a follow-up, what advice would you give to high school students and incoming college students?
I would say the biggest thing is don't be afraid and trust yourself and believe in yourself. Because, the biggest thing is sometimes it's not going out there and taking that risk, especially when you're younger, and believing and trusting in what you can do. All right. The mind sometimes will prevent us from doing it. You can do it. It's just your self-doubt will prevent you from trying that. And you can always change careers if you're not happy right away. You got to trust and do it and feel and understand what it is first.
I like how you said change careers. There's also different opportunities within certain organizations and businesses where they allow their employees to kind of shift around their roles and try out in terms of training and being able giving the employees opportunities to try out different things. So, have you experienced any of that at Northfield Bank?
Well, I haven't. I mean, my career here is very short, only having been here for 3 years. But I can
Hmm.
tell you that right now we have a portfolio manager that was a customer service rep down in the branch. So we promoted him up here to our lending team. So within the organization, there are opportunities. We have people that look at being a portfolio manager that go over to credit. You have tellers that, move up in the ranks that go into the back office. So there's always different departments and different skill sets that, if you do your job and you create a positive attitude, other departments will be willing to train you because they know who you are and the experience they've had with you. So there's always that opportunity to look. You just have to talk to people and understand and pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Alan, we are really big believers here of promoting from within whenever possible. I think it just creates a more collaborative environment. And to Eric's comments, I mean, we have a number of tellers that are now in our IT department, in our Bank Secrecy Act department, in our compliance groups. There's a lot of opportunities when you're in banking because you touch so many things that are occurring throughout the organization. Tellers uh, are involved in IT all the time, right? They're using our information technology. They're responsible for a lot of our Bank Secrecy Act compliance. So to the extent they're building an understanding of those areas, and they have the desire to learn, they will have opportunities to move into those areas and be focused on them full time.
Thank you, Stephen. Um, I'd like to stick with you and see what advice would you give to our younger audience?
I think, what Eric said was spot on. I think part of your question too was, what would I have given advice myself?
Mm-hmm.
I think balance is correct. I think, what when I said in the beginning, whatever you do, give it your best. But at the same time, too, when I was growing up in accounting and building my career, I probably spent too much time on my career and not more balanced on other things in life too, including family. So balance is so important in all facets. So I think go head into whatever you're doing, but always have perspective about what life really is all about.
And Alan, if I could just jump in as well, my advice would be, to young adults, is to not say no, to be a sponge, to absorb anything that you can. Don't say no to new experiences. I think when you're just starting out, thinking about a path if you're planning to go to college or after high school, you may not know what you want to do, and that's perfectly okay. I think, very few people actually, know what they want to do for the rest of their life and then go about doing it. It's okay to try new things and find what works for you, and understand that may very well change over time. And, there's few of us that, if you go to college, that you pick a degree that is specifically, for banking. There's, like Steve said, there's so many different needs in the banking industry, from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all types of educational experiences. There's always a need for it within banking. So it's just what works for you, what interests you, and gives you that passion, and then just following through with that, and eventually you'll be successful if you just follow that passion.
Thank you, James. And Tracy, would you like to add on to anything?
I would just say that, I think it's important for any young person to understand when they do get a job, that they want to learn as much as they possibly can. They want to develop a really good work ethic, come to work on time, put in the work when you're there. It's rewarding if you do that. It's very important to have a good work ethic, and it's very important to try to learn as much as you can. At any job that you go to work for, they're going to want to teach you things. They're going to want, like they said, it's better to promote within. You want to teach people that you have and you can rely on and that you trust to move up the ladder. It's an easier process for everyone involved. So there's definitely opportunity out there. You just have to be, a dedicated hard worker and develop a good work ethic. I think years ago, work ethic was very important and it still is, but I think in the younger generation, they don't quite understand what that means as much as they probably should.
Thank you, Tracy. And for someone who's interested in banking, particularly with Northfield, what do you guys are looking for in applicants? And if there are any internship opportunities available, um, how would our audience be able to access those?
Well, I'll jump in there. I know our website, we have a career uh, section, very, very helpful. We have an internship program that is occurring this summer. We
Mhm.
have a number of job postings, and I believe some of them are actually temporarily type summer type things too. So I would recommend for any company starting with their website and looking at what resources are there. And if you are interested in a company, learn a little bit about them before you apply for a job. And I think if you're looking at banking, you know, starting as a teller is probably the best place you can start. That's really, sort of step one in banking. That's where you'll have the most interaction with customers. That's where you'll learn about the products and services. And that's where you'll learn to build your skill sets with people.
Thank you, Stephen. And that is all of my questions for today. So thank you all for joining Junior Achievement. and participating in this panel-led discussion.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you,
you,
Alan.
Alan.
A great opportunity.
All right, thank you, everyone. And that concludes our session today.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.